So, making up a drive shaft for a buddy of mine out of scavenged parts. This is where a carrier bearing would be pressed on. I've turned this way down already. This is like a slip yoke. It looks identical to the one on the back of my 450. Right where the carrier bearing sits. So, two-piece drive shaft, which has its place in the world for how short my truck is. It's quite stupid, and my buddy's truck is the same way. This is a yoke we scavenged off the drive shaft he already had. And I just, may have slicey diced that end off and turned it up nice and pretty again. So this, because we don't need the carrier bearing, but this was for a much smaller diameter tube, I'm making a big old bushing to press and weld on there. So it is we're going to see if that 60-ton press will do it. I got a 4 thousandths interference fit heel and a 2 thousandths interference fit heel. That press fit might actually hold it on its own, but I kind of doubt it. So once that's pressed on there, you see I got a beveled heel and a beveled heel. Well, that comes into play later. First, I'm going to drill through heel and heel and press in 2 3/8-inch steel pins. Just cold rolled. This is 1018 and that'll be 1018 as well. Then I'm going to weld the crap out of it. I'm not going to weld this end over here because I don't want to create a stress riser in this shaft, even though realistically it shouldn't matter. Then it's going to go back in the lathe and I'm going to turn a taper on the back of this and make that all pretty like. Now I'm going to turn a shoulder in this to match that shoulder. Then we're going to take that tube that's leaning up in there. I'm going to gently put it on, and I'm going to weld it in the lathe because I don't really care about my lathe. It's a piece of crap anyways. And when all is said and done, it's probably still going to vibrate like crazy because I have no way of balancing this. So I'm just going to indicate it nice and true and hope it doesn't move when I weld it. Alright, so progress. I threw it back in the lathe and began to do a little on that and then realized, I can see this kind of wobbling. The OD of this is not true to the ID. Well, let's rephrase that. I am sure this did not press on perfectly straight and beautiful and all of that. So, I did indicate this in when I turned the ID, but I am sure it is not on this part perfectly. So, I've gone ahead and pressed it on. It didn't take near as much force as I thought it might. I set up in the mill. And I did not drill and ream. I used a flat bottom drill, otherwise known as an end mill, because of this taper I was going through. Stay. And it didn't stay. Okay, so these are just a couple of cold rolled 1018 3/8 round ball that I cut off in the bandsaw and give a quick polish on the bench grinder. They are a nice slip fit into both those. I measure clearance here, but I would guess they're probably about a 3 or 4 thousandths clearance. I'm just guessing at it. So, I could probably at this point literally just put a small tack on either one of those, or thread those and run a bolt in right there. It'd be kind of difficult to thread because of that taper. You kind of sink it and do it, but whatever. You could affix these in if I made them a little bit tighter of fit. I could go turn some, say 376, 377, and pound them in with a hammer. And you would not need any weld on that. I would be pretty confident in saying it would hold as is. Just the press fit between these two parts here would probably hold it. Although I did get some shavings coming out, so that's kind of a consequence of making press fits too tight, as you end up cutting things instead of making them squeeze. Speaking of which, Mr. Squeezy over there is I think I only used about 40 tons to do this. 30 to 40 tons, somewhere in there. I'm kind of guessing at it because the gauge is now MIA, but, you know, whatever. Who needs a gauge? So next step, I'm going to weld all this up. Next step after that is I'm going to clean up the centers at either end. Yeah, don't look at how the Teflon's coming off. We're going to ignore that. I'm going to weld up either end. Or clean up the centers on either end after I weld this up. No weld here because I don't want to create a stress rising. Probably wouldn't, but I just don't want to. It's safer not to. Then we're going to turn this between centers so I know I'm on the original axis of this and I know it's good and straight and true and all of that jazz. Because I don't, if I'm off of the center axis that this spline rides into heel, it's going to wobble. We don't want that. We'll turn all that up. This will then get chucked back in the, this will, I'll then put it back in the chuck heel. Not going to do that now because then I'd have nothing true to indicate off of because my chuck jaws would take up almost all of that and I don't want to hold on to that. So, time to bun some rods and then we will continue this. There may be a pinhole right there. See, I'm pretty sure there is a pinhole right there because I've trapped gases inside of a hot chamber now and yeah. Hello, Grindel. Alright, so I see the little pinhole there now. It's where I, didn't step over far enough to fill the hole where that pin is. So it's fine. It's not porosity. As long as we don't have porosity in my glorious, glorious, ugly welds, because 6011 for life, and these are probably older than I am. I was given a 50-pound box of these years ago hauling scrap metal, and he said they've been on a shelf for, I don't know, since the 90s. I ain't never going to use them. Okay, they'll probably still good. It's fine, trust me. I'm a certified welder. I do it for a living. I'm not certified, although I do it for a living. Nothing I have welded has fallen down yet. Knock on wood. Anyhow, so I'm going to let this cool for a little while. And like I said, the weld is just kind of icing on the cake. Like, this connection, I think, is severely overbuilt for what it is. The only reason I put as much attention on this is because the diameter is so much smaller. Like, when you're welding on the outside of a shoulder here, that weld is very easily stronger than the tube you're pressing on, or tapping on in this case. Here, you're not going to have you should not have any issues with that. I am going to clean this up, and like I said, this is going to go back in the lathe and get all turned and pretty. It's 7 o'clock. I'm going to go do something else, probably involves drinking, and come back when this is not so hot. Put a little spot in the yoke. So, here is kind of a finished part. This is quite rough. As you can tell, I got the flap disc treatment. Drilled out a piece ball stock and cut it in half with a bandsaw to make a way of clamping on that without tearing up splines. This pissed me off a lot because I could not get it to stop chattering. I'm machining a big spring here between centers, and this thing's just flopping all over the place doing its thing, and it was not a good time. But it's done, and my surface finish, although not great by any means, is acceptable for what this is. Also, I may have chipped this tool quite badly and chose to ignore it and just kept going because it kind of acted like a chip breaker, which I wasn't going to complain about. So yeah, that is progress. The only thing left on this entire jobble, non-paying jobble, he owes me a favor after this, is literally cutting the tube length, setting the thing up in the lathe, and welding it. So there's no more machine work per se, it's just using the lathe as a fixture for the last bit. I will get a clip of that when it's done. Alright, so this end I had to cut off and weld again. I had indicated length of the shaft after getting that end incorrectly. Welded everything, took it out. This has 1/16 of an inch of run out in it somehow. I double checked my alignment of tailstock. Tailstock was fine, so I don't know where that came from. I don't see how it could have warped that much. I don't see how this curve had allowed it to move that much, but somehow it did. And you run an indicator length of that in two ways. By the way, this has a 5/1000th of an inch of bow to it in one direction. So that was pain in the ass, and because I ended up making a fugly mess out of it trying to cut it apart and weld it back, I ended up polishing that one back out smooth. This end didn't come out too bad. This end, I've ended up with 7/1000ths to run out, and you see how Neil wonders? Yeah, this tube's not round, so good as I can get. I showed y'all how I did all this, so I'm not 100% confident that's the center, but best I can measure it is. Alright, so this end, if I measure on this piece that I turned between centers that were already on this piece, so I'm going to presume everything else machined afterwards was concentric to that, and that the yoke is concentric to that. I don't know it, but I'm presuming that it is. And this is all machined between centers off of that original piece, so this is concentric to whatever that is. So I measure off of that, and well, I'm on part side ground. Hang on, let's go there. So measuring off of that, I have 17/1000ths of run out if I don't include the parts I just ground on. If I move this over here, I have 22/1000ths of run out. I'm not happy with that, but I think I looked up specs from a couple of reputable manufacturers of shafts and shaft-like items, and they say they shoot for less than 20/1000ths to run out is their spec. So I'm 22 on the bad end, I'm 7 on the good end. U-joints are in phase as best I can tell. Yeah. This whole piece was a pain in the ass. I wasn't piecing together scrapyard bits and turning off old yokes and whatnot and trying to piece it together with a flea bay tube. This probably wouldn't have been as difficult. Licorice. So then that looks like crap because I'm not a good painter. Yeah. Done diddly. By the way, that's not even in the back gear. Done. Hopefully never to do again.